Oh, God, guys. Do you believe I actually sat through this entire interview the other day? Dr. Phil interviewing Donald Trump. Can you believe I sat there and listened to the whole damn thing? Now, look, I'll admit it. It was on double speed. I'll be damned if these idiots steal an hour of my life on normal speed. Shit, if there was triple speed, I would have listened on that, right? But, man, I'm embarrassed that there were times when I was a kid that I kind of enjoyed watching Dr. Phil's show. I'm embarrassed at that fact, looking at what happened here. So I'm going to show you some pieces here. We'll break it down, but the bottom line is Dr. Phil gargled Trump's nuts to his face. It was sloppy. It was wet. And he tried to put this veneer of like faux intellectualism over supporting Donald Trump. So without any further ado, let's dive into it, and we're going to have a lot to say about this one.
Last week, 12 jurors deliberated for 2 days and rendered a verdict finding Donald Trump guilty on all 34 charges of falsifying business records, leading to an unprecedented felony conviction of not only a former president, but also the front-runner nominee for the Republican Party. I traveled to Mar-a-Lago to sit down one-on-one with President Trump for an unfiltered, no-holds-barred interview. And I promise you, no topic was off limits.
Unfiltered, no-holds-barred interview, and then he proceeds to jack him off for an hour straight.
I want to sit down with President Biden and Kennedy as well, because everybody needs to vote, and not just vote, but make informed votes.
He says, I don't endorse candidates. I guarantee you, if you watch the whole interview, you will walk away knowing exactly who the fuck he's voting for. There's no doubt about it.
Honor to be with you. Let me just say, it's great to look at the logo. I've seen that sucker a long time.
Yeah. You look well.
I feel good.
Do you?
Feel good. No pressure.
Yeah.
It's nice to lead a life of no pressure whatsoever. Corruption, surrounded by corrupt judges and corrupt politicians. Other than that, there's no pressure.
You know, you and I talked the other night, and I work in trial sciences for a lot of my career, and so I have a particular interest in the dynamics of the trial setting.
You know, it was interesting when you called the other day about doing an interview. A lot of people want to do interviews, and I don't just agree to them very easily. But I've always had great respect for you. I watch your show, some of the real good ones, and some of the less intellectual ones, and that's okay too. But it's always been you've always been very special, and I knew that you were, in some form, very much involved with trials, and I found it to be very interesting that you would take this up. It's a very important thing.
So just to break down what he's saying there, Dr. Phil called Trump the other day and said, what's happening to you is really bad, okay? And I'm against it, okay? And I want to use my platform. I like how I turned him into that guy from South Park, Mr. Garrison. And I want to use my platform to let everybody know that it's not okay what they're doing to you, okay? And that's why Trump agreed to the interview. He made it seem like, oh man, I get a lot of people reach out, and I don't agree to many of them. Seems like you do agree to a lot of them, by the way. But also this one, oh, you're sucking me off in front of the world? Sure, I'll do an interview.
And I know that there was some news coming out of Georgia today, there was some news coming out of Florida today, that they're stepping back from this. And
Very good news.
I called for the other day, and I don't know if you saw it, but on Merritt Street Media, where I now do my show, I called for President Biden to stop all of this now. And of course, a lot of people said, oh, he can't stop it, it's a state case. Well, okay, that's an explanation for stupid people, but for people that understand how this works behind the scenes and all, I say the same thing. They need to stop this. They need to stop pursuing you. Since you started your campaign in 2015.
He has no idea how the system works. He doesn't understand how it works. Joe Biden cannot pardon Donald Trump or commute a sentence for Donald Trump. He can't do that if it's state charges. He doesn't have the ability. He only has the ability to do that for federal charges. But he's making it seem like, oh, if Joe Biden makes a phone call, he can stop it all. But if Joe Biden makes a phone call to any of the prosecutors who are going after Trump and says, stand down, don't do this, they have the right and the ability to say, disagree. I'm going to go ahead and continue. Why is he making it seem like, oh, well, obviously Joe Biden is behind all this? Again, this is the contradiction I can never get over. These guys half the time say Joe Biden is senile, he's too old, he has dementia, he's sundowning, he doesn't know where the fuck he is, he shits his pants, that's the new one that came out the other day, and he can't even get out of bed in the morning, goes to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. These are all the things you hear. But then, at the same time, they say he's the grand puppet master in control of absolutely everything, and he can control all these cases, even the ones that have absolutely nothing to do with the federal government in any way, shape, or form. By the way, to the idea that, oh, this is political persecution, et cetera, Joe Biden's own Justice Department is going after Hunter Biden, his son. Does it really look like he's the puppet master pulling all the strings behind the scenes? I mean, God, it's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. Let's keep going.
There have been so many attempts to get you off the board even before you started your campaign. Then once you were in office, 2 impeachment opportunities, they changed the rules to try to make it high crimes and misdemeanors if there were business conflicts, and in this case, and this case.
Never ends.
It seems to...
No, that's okay. He doesn't know what he's talking about. There were 2 impeachments against Trump. The impeachments got through the House. So technically he was impeached, but it didn't get through the Senate. You have like a trial in the Senate on the impeachment, and then you need a giant majority in order to get it through the Senate. And in that scenario, that's when a president would actually be removed from office. It would have to get through the Senate. Now, neither of these got through the Senate. I called it from the very beginning. Everybody who follows this stuff and knows this stuff knew, hey, it might get through the House, but it'll die in the Senate. So I was actually against the impeachments the way they were going about them, because they pick like the dumbest issues you could ever imagine, like that phone call over Ukraine. But that doesn't mean like he's framing it as if, well, you were perfectly innocent and you did nothing wrong and it was just a political witch hunt. Okay, but there's like 78 things he did do which were worthy of impeachment, and they just didn't go after him over any of those things. Doing an illegal strike against an Iranian commander who was on the ground fighting ISIS, that would be impeachment worthy. His first military raid as president, which he approved, which killed a young American girl, that would be worthy of impeachment. His business dealings, he brings it up to poo-poo it, like, oh, the business dealings, as if that's something that they... Are you kidding me? He violated the Emoluments Clause 57 ways to Sunday. Taking money from foreign governments and then doing favors for them, that would definitely be impeachment worthy. But again, as you're going to see, this entire interview is Dr. Phil gargling Trump's nuts.
That is a distraction to you, and I really wonder how that affects you. What do you say to yourself about that? Because
how do you feel about the fact that there's a witch hunt and people are unfairly coming after you? Okay, how do you feel about that, Don? How do you feel about being a special, pretty little boy who everybody should love and adore, but you're being unfairly treated? How does that make you feel inside? Does that make you sad, Donald? It'd make me sad if I were you, okay?
It's a never-ending thing. There's a term that I know you've heard many times. It's called Trump derangement syndrome, and nobody's ever seen anything like it.
I would argue the people with Trump derangement syndrome are the ones who are in his cult. They are deranged in the sense that they can't find any fault with him in any way, shape, or form, with anything he does, with any policy he supports, with any of his characteristics or his actions. That's the real Trump derangement syndrome. It's not the people who are against him.
In one way, we drive him totally crazy because we're doing the right thing.
I fucking can't stand conversations that don't even try. They're not even trying. You know, the reason, Phil, they're against me is because I'm amazing and because I'm tremendous and because I did everything right and I'm doing everything right. And they're against doing things that are right. Okay, Phil? I like how I turned Trump into Mr. Garrison now, too. All right. I'm just getting started. Guys. There's so many different parts of this interview I could have picked. So the whole thing is just a hand job from beginning to end. I've highlighted 3 different ones here, but even when they get into policy that, you know, they love Netanyahu and make some dumbass comments about the economy and how wonderful everything was under Donald Trump. Okay, all right, here we go. Let's continue. We got more.
you have a personality-driven platform, just like I do. Mine's a fraction of yours. You've taken every shot you can imagine. You've been criticized, attacked.
Okay, no, you know, this isn't repeating. You saw this same sort of question at the beginning, and now we're 43 minutes in, and he's asking the same sort of thing. People are really unfair to you, okay? So how do you respond to them being unfair to you again, okay?
You've taken every shot you can imagine. You've been criticized, attacked, called every name in the book. They've turned the judicial system against you, the intelligence community. 51 intelligence officers swear that this is a Russian plant, this laptop over here, right before the election. The media has turned against you, print, TV, radio, internet, in the streets.
It could never be for any legitimate reason. It's always, these are hysterical idiots that are against you, of course.
How do you deal with that stress in your most private moments?
Really hard-hitting stuff here, Phil. If I got an interview with, like, Joe Biden, would I be doing this with Joe Biden? Is that what I'd be doing? Would I be throwing him softballs down the center of the plate about his fucking feelings?
2 things. Number 1, I don't like thinking about it. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I don't want to think about it. Number 2, I have tremendous support. I have the people's support. I think if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to handle it so easily. When a judge who has conflicts like nobody's ever had wants to put me in jail, when he puts a gag order and says, if you talk about these things, we're going to put you in jail. I'm the Republican candidate. I was president. I'm leading the Democrat by a lot.
Again, he thinks that makes it so he should be immune, right? I was president, and now I'm the leading candidate. So obviously, by definition, I can never commit a crime, ever. And of course, Phil's going to interject and be like, hold on now. In this country, we believe in the rule of law. It's supposed to apply equally. It's not supposed to matter your status. Of course, he's going to interject and say that, right? Right?
I like not to think about it. It's like they say, oh, don't eat that food, don't eat this food, don't do this, don't do that. They don't really know. It might be good for you. It might not be bad. It might be good. They say it causes cancer. I say, don't talk to me about it. I don't want to hear the word.
In other words, he's sort of compartmentalized. That's what he's describing. I compartmentalize. I don't want to hear anything negative about anything, and I'm just going to keep on my path. Which, look, that's a great quality for an athlete, right? I can compartmentalize. I can put aside the booze. I can put aside the haters, etc., and I just stick to the plan. That's great for an athlete. That's good for a YouTuber, right? A YouTuber, nothing hinges on the decisions I make. For a fucking president and a leading candidate? Jesus. All right, I got more. Michael Tracy highlighted this one here for us.
Why are people so energized against President Donald J. Trump?
Well, I think it's, to a certain extent, it's habit. Not necessarily against me. I think Democrats vote out of habit. I'll give you an example. I was the best president for Israel ever.
Oh.
Golan Heights, all of the things I did for Israel, and yet I get less than 50% of the votes. It's shocking to me.
It's incredible to me that Joe Biden has really fucked up his re-election chances on Israel, arming and funding a genocide, hitching his wagon in Netanyahu, who wants Trump to win, doesn't want Biden to win. He's done that. And what does Trump do in response to it? He's like, I'm going to go to the right of Joe Biden on this issue. What happened to, America first? Remember that? Apparently Trump is now Israel first. I'm going to give them all the money. I'm going to give them all the weapons. I'm going to allow them to take the Golan Heights. He's also, now there's reports that Miriam Adelson, who's going to give him many millions of dollars, that her condition is, I'll give you the millions, but you need to allow Israel to annex the West Bank. So here's a guy who gave us the Abraham Accords and gave us the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. Those are two things that led directly to October 7th. It was a giant middle finger to the Palestinians. It was, hey, you don't matter, Palestinians. And then Hamas said, oh, really? We don't? Watch this. And this is what he brags about. And he's pissed because the Jewish American vote is still not a majority in favor of him, even though he's given Israel everything they want. Well, there are plenty of Jewish Americans who are not in favor of the far right-wing ethno-state theocracy of Israel. Jesus Christ. I hate this guy.
And Biden's a disaster, and Obama was a disaster for Israel with the Iran nuclear deal that he approved.
He's citing literally one of the best things Obama ever did, and it worked. And he ripped it up. He ripped up the Iran nuclear agreement and made it worse. And he's citing that as if it's a bad thing. But I know Phil's going to interject and be like, hey, the Iran deal kind of worked, and, what you did didn't, so I don't know why you would be bragging about.
Particularly a path toward nuclear weapons. And I say, why? And I say, it's habit. They're used to voting for Democrats. Black people are used to voting for Democrats, but they're coming off it. They're smart. They're seeing what's happened. They're seeing criminal justice reform. They're seeing the black colleges and universities. I got it funded. They're seeing all of the things that I've done. Nobody could do what I did.
His argument is everybody who's against me is just against me because of habit, because they're just used to voting. They're mindless drones. They're used to vote Democrat, vote Democrat. And that's why the people are against me. And then there are many who are actually changing their minds and they're in favor of me now. That's like when you go to a job interview and they ask you, hey, what's your biggest fault? And you're like, I'm too honest, right? Hey, why do people vote against you? That's just habit. They mean well, but they can't help themselves. It just, eventually they'll come around. It can never be a serious reason. It can never be, hey, you were charged with 91 felonies. It can never be, hey, remember when you said you want to terminate and suspend the Constitution to keep your ass in power after you lost an election? It can never be, hey, maybe people are against me because I destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is one of the only parts of our government that actually looks out for the people. It can never be, hey, you dropped the court cases and the new regulations against the predatory payday loan industry and allowed them to run wild. It can never be, hey, you cut taxes for the rich and helped out billionaires and corporations way more than your average American. It can never be, maybe they're against me because I increased the drone strikes 432%, even though I pretended like I was anti-war. I kept us in Iraq. I kept us in Afghanistan. I assassinated the Iranian commander. I tried to coup Venezuela. I ripped up the Iran agreement. I pulled out of the Paris Accords. I say I want war with Mexico openly now. I armed Saudi Arabia as they did a genocide. By the way, my son-in-law took $2 billion from Saudi Arabia We didn't even give them a slap on the wrist when they massacred a Washington Post journalist. You know, maybe people are against me because I say I want to do the largest deportation in U.S. history. And even law-abiding people who've been here for years, I want to kick their asses out. Maybe people are against me because I want to expand the Muslim ban, and I want to ban socialists and communists and have ideological thought screening for people to even come into this country. Maybe they're against me because I outsourced 200,000 jobs, even though I said I was going to protect all the factory jobs and the manufacturing jobs. Maybe that's why no, never. It's always, oh my God, oh, it's just because they mean well, but they're just voting out of habit. This whole interview was a fucking disgrace. Is what it was. And some people look at Dr. Phil like he's some sort of legitimate expert, right? He's not. He's morphed into a right-wing hack, and he's doing right-wing hack shit. And that's why Trump accepted the interview, and that's why he sat there and had a great time. Because yet again, I'll say it now for the third time, Dr. Phil's whole job in this interview was to gargle his nuts to his face. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.